Hi, I'm Tyson.
I'm Colin.
I'm Ryan.
And I'm Adam.
And we're the Gamesmiths, and we've just gotten done playing Belief in the Old Gods. And we'd like to tell you a little bit about our experience with it, starting with Adam.
I had a really good time. I don't like area control games usually. We've debated whether this is a worker placement or area control. I think it's an area control game, but
Can we compromise it as a worker control game?
worker control
Dudes
game.
on a map.
Dudes on a map game. But I really liked it. I liked the way, typically in any kind of area control like that, where there's conflict or you're fighting each other or trying to eliminate someone else's players, it's usually done. I just like the way it was done in this. It was creative. It was clever. I liked using the cards I like the variety of the ways that you could replace your worshipers with somebody else's worshipers or vice versa.
And in this one, it was so much of a mystery, too, because we didn't draft it. So we had no idea exactly what anyone... It was more of a bluffing, like, well, I could be playing orange or maybe I'm playing red.
Sure.
So...
Yeah, and we didn't draft, which I think all of us think after playing it once, it'd be a really fun game to draft.
Yeah, fun,
Right.
completely different strategy.
Though Colin does bring up a good point that the intrigue and the mystery kind of portion could be lost in the draft, which doesn't mean... I think both options of draft or not draft
Well, the
are
strategy
very
just changes.
viable in the game. Exactly.
Completely.
Because I think there's a lot of games out there, like I'm thinking of Terraforming Mars specifically, that have a draft element, and I would never not play that game without the draft component. And there's a lot of games that they say, hey, there's a draft, you can draft, and they don't have a reason behind it. I think in this game, it adds a different experience and different fun, and I like that
Yeah, I
option.
like that you can do both a lot.
Yeah, that is cool. I liked the game felt really balanced. I liked all the gods. One didn't seem out of balance to me. I liked the harbingers. Mm-hmm. Those were really fun, and I just overall liked the simplicity of the game, and I caught on really quick to it. We play a lot of games, but still, you can tell when something's simple and when it's not. That was just a good, fun, simple way to play you got me call it worker placement now. Area control game, and
Told you.
again, I
Worker
don't
control.
typically like area or worker control games, but I actually really did enjoy this. The game had this natural side taking thing to it, which
Teaming up on each other.
we only played it once, but I can imagine most games would probably have that element, which I liked to it. It also had this subtle negotiation type. I felt like I was going to lose unless Colin teamed up with me, but I didn't know Colin's motives, and I think we had enough colors down at the end to where people could be motivated by a lot of different things. Colin ended up having 3 of the same colors, which without drafting seems kind of rare to me. I was shocked that he had 3 blues. I was not expecting
I started
that.
out with the blue, and I was like, well, let's see. And I tried to misdirect.
Well, and the fact that everybody had blues was also...
Yeah.
Sure.
So
There
no
was a
one
total
was going
of
after it, so that was awesome. No blue
7
was going
or
off the
something.
table. I was like, oh my gosh, it's completely full up.
Yeah. So I liked that there was that subtle team-making thing. I liked that there was a little bit of a psychological component to it without it being right out front. I felt next time... it's hard because with only 4 rounds, I didn't feel like I could just burn around by doing something that was off of my strategy, but maybe now that I saw how it played out, it was amazing how fast a color could disappear off the board. Green was everywhere, it was fully saturated, and then it was almost gone
Within
one round. And so I guess maybe my immediate assumption that I couldn't show, that I had to just go with my strategy and I had to show my hand from the start was probably false. I think even Ryan's strategy to wait until the very end to build up his yellow, which he had the most of, seemed to work pretty well because yellow was just quiet over there, and all of a sudden with one move, he got 7 of them on the board. So
Well, and that's why I didn't go for blue. I was hiding my strategy because I didn't want everyone to gang up on blue and say, I don't want this.
right.
Yeah. Well, and that's how I felt about it too, and I thought I was doing really well because I was like, oh yeah, I've got this under the belt type of thing nobody knows about, and I'm silently manipulating it. But come to find out, we're all silently trying to manipulate that, and that was a really cool element about it that I enjoyed a lot because I was like, "Oh, I feel really proud of myself,"
Yeah,
and
like,
that was a lot of the fun to the
Blue
game.
succeeded. We're like, yeah, we all wanted blue to succeed.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh.
Oh, okay, no, that's it. Yeah.
But so that hugely positive. Mechanically, I thought it was great. I don't think I would change anything. There were a few things when it came to visually that I thought could be changed. One on the I guess it would be the left side of the map. All those areas were kind of stacked up together.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't like that. It felt too clustered together.
That's just
and
the
they
way
all
it is
just,
in the world of Arkham.
Well,
But the way you
I would
could've-
think of,
or
I would
the
actually,
Lovecraft.
well, to that end, I would make the game smaller in scale, maybe, and have it
Instead
take
of trying to
place
be the whole-
inside one particular city or one particular area. Like the whole thing could take place around Stonehenge because they're trying to wake up the gods at Stonehenge, and they could take place in just different towns around
Or
England.
Innsmouth or
Yeah,
Dunwich.
Same
makes
thing.
sense. It's
Yeah.
usually
But I
in
would-
New England.
It is, but whatever. Pick a location and make it a little bit smaller because I think
Yeah.
that makes sense, especially when you're getting down
They're all
to
written about
with
too.
one like it made less sense here. Like I can get from Boston to London, but I can't get from New York to London. Like if we're allowed to move these huge distances in one turn, why does it cost the same to go the inch? So I think, and there's a lot of clarification you put in the rules about these locations are all next to each other and next to these things and next to these. And there was just a chunk of the rules that went to kind of clearing up what you already realize is a little bit confusing, kind of having
So-
all those locations next to each other.
To be clear, though, you're not saying reduce the amount of locations that Cube
Right.
can place. You're just saying
Call
the
them-
geographical
right.
area.
Make it across one,
Okay.
make them towns
Just
across
get
the
rid of
state.
New York and do a different
Right.
city a little
Or-
further away to make it.
Well, no, I mean what I'm saying. If you wanted to make that change to the current map, but I am suggesting that you
Just make it
lower
smaller.
the scale altogether, put it inside a town or a province or a state, and it can be buildings in a town or areas in a town or a couple small towns across a county. You get what I'm saying.
I can agree with that.
And do that because I think the globe trotting thing was a little weird, and it was fine because ultimately they were just spaces on a board. But I don't think that informed the game at all, and I think ultimately it was a little confusing, especially when we were trying to figure out some moves.
I like
towards
it
the
being
end
a
there.
little bigger because if you're multiple gods all fighting
Right.
for worshippers around the
The
world,
world,
or if you're all
right.
fighting for
And-
worshippers in a town, like that doesn't. I think it should be bigger, but to me, when I did see the map, I've seen plenty of map games, and they're all very different than this, so I immediately associated it with a diplomacy type game or a risk type game or a dudes on a map type game.
Right.
And so I think by doing what you're saying and making it less like the world
There's
map,
a certain expectation
like
when you
changing
see a
that
world map.
yeah,
on the board.
I'm
You're gonna get
thinking
a certain
military
type
type game,
You're getting
which
Pandemic, you're getting Risk.
Yeah,
you
pandemic.
know.
That's
Well,
another big one.
Eldritch Horror is for Cthulhu
Right.
is the whole world. So I associated that with that game with Lovecraft. So I automatically felt like I just could understand this game based on just that one fact.
So
So,
is there-
I like a bigger board. Oh, and just one note on the big board. If you are going to keep it, Mumbai should be Bombay because 1920s.
Right.
That's what it was. But yeah.
But to tap into that a little bit, I think that one of your questions specifically was about theme and whether or not this fit thematically. And I kind of wanted to touch on that a little bit, that thematically I felt like it was good and I liked that and I think it was accessible for people. And Lovecraft is very accessible, obviously. That's why there's hundreds of games of Lovecraftian kind of mythos. But it could essentially be any type of a game.
I would honestly, I know that you're pitching to publishers, correct? I would almost consider retheming this and pitching this as like a pandemic variant almost.
It kind of felt like that to me.
Like it was more of like a
but
competitive.
You're trying to get them on instead of
Right,
getting 'em
like
off.
it's a competitive. Well, it's just a competitive thing almost. It would be like a competitive version of Pandemic or
Plague Inc.
There's exactly
Yeah.
like Plague Inc., where you each represent a certain type of disease,
And you're trying
to
destroy the
spread your
world.
virus across different parts of different parts of the world. And so this could almost be pitched as like a
James Bond
a
game.
Pandemic variant if you want to pick to a specific one. Or you could be supervillains trying to carry out a plot as well. But yeah, so I think there are different theming options for this game. The one bit of kind of feedback I did have for you is your rules are kind of a mess. They're all there, and the game's good, and the mechanics are good, but the rules are not organized very well, and it's not very clear. I think hopefully what we were playing was what you intended us to play. We had a lot of fun with it, so if that was totally by accident, I don't think so. I think we got pretty close to what you designed, but there were debates all throughout the game as to what the any color cards meant, and there were, when we were reviewing the rules before, or I was reviewing the rules before I started, it was difficult for me to figure out what all the symbols meant. You had a listing of what each of the symbols were at one point that excluded the move arrow symbols and didn't explain those, and those were only explained in the paragraph of the Harbinger cards, where the Harbinger cards would say, each Harbinger card moves a cultist according to the number of symbols that they have, and that's where I figured out where those symbols meant. But those symbols also appear on the Abomination cards and on several other, and on the Old God cards has that symbol, so they appear everywhere, but their explanation isn't in the same place where all the other symbols are explained. I would definitely include reference cards and charts if possible that just say, here are your symbols and here's what they mean, because that was our biggest confusion throughout the game, and it's all in here, but it's not organized real well. It takes some digging into, and ultimately once we got rolling, you had a pretty solid game that moved along really well, and we all got it, and we all got what we were doing. Once we agreed, we had a few disagreements, but we all kind of agreed, okay, this is how we're going to deal with this disagreement.
Yeah.
This is how we're going to play with moving forward. We accepted that, and we went through the game, and we had a lot of fun ultimately. But you'll see on the video, both in the rules and the playthrough, where we were debating over certain rules, and I would definitely clarify those. That being said, I do like the heavy use of symbols on the cards does leave it a low language barrier game. There's a low level. You can play this in almost any language. You don't need to know English to play this game. You just have to reprint the rule sheet in whatever language. So that's very nice.
I did think, however, it could use a little clarification on some of the symbols. Like we were wondering when you have to place one for every two, are that of the same color? So if there's, I think in our example we had 4 greens, 2 yellows, or something like that.
Yeah. Right, a total
and
of
if
6.
are we placing one green for each 2 greens? Or are we placing one of any color for 2 of
everything
any
that's on
other
that
color?
space.
And I think
Right.
just having that white generic cube doesn't clearly state that. So I do like what you're saying, Ryan, where there's not necessarily text on the cards, and I like that a lot too. There's a few of them that had some text on them, but I think that just needs to be explained better somehow.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And
Or
I think-
even like bringing in some colors to like the tunnel or the book or the port or whatever. Just better explanations around.
Yeah, but colors
That.
with those. And you have in your rule book here, you have clearly you have some old pictures of the cards that say things like convert 2 cultists at a location with an archive, and now you've replaced that with the kind of recycle the looping arrow symbol, but you still have convert and replace in different parts in the text here, so it can be a little bit confusing. So I definitely take another run through of the rules, reorganize them. Put a nice chart in there of this is what this token means, this is what this token means. Every symbol should have, if you're going to go this route, and I like it, because clearly you were at one point writing the words out, and now you've replaced them with icons, and I like that. But in the rules book, there needs to be that chart somewhere of icon, this is what it means. Icon, this is what it means. And it's just not in here, and that would have just helped a lot with what we were doing. And even then, that icon of any color could have had its own little explanation. And, we were debating over that. And then generally in games like this, Legendary comes to mind as playtesting is done and people are confused by particular cards. Just kind of put an FAQ at the bottom. And you do have one in here that has a couple clarifications in it, but it doesn't have that specific clarification. So maybe just add that specific clarification. Yeah. I don't know how many unique cards you have in the deck,
right?
But if it's not that many, because I know they're repeated across colors, so if it's not that many unique cards, I might go as far as just writing out, in kind of long form, the intention of each card or an example of how each card is played in the back if you only have maybe 10 or 12 different unique cards. I'm not sure how many are in there. So if it's too many, that might not be viable. But that's, other than that, I think you have a really solid game. Maybe, do some tweaking to the themes and definitely clean up your rule book. But overall, it was a lot of fun. And I think you got a solid game. So,
anyone else?
Yeah, I want to talk about the points. I would have liked to have more options for points. I see how we kind of talked about how it kind of forced you to put all their cultists in, and I'm not sure how that's fitting.
Are you talking about how we ran out of cubes?
How we ran out of cubes. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
So you maxed out at like 10.
Yeah. I would have liked
worshippers,
to have
followers.
I see how it makes it so nobody can run away with the game, and it makes it more back and forth. But I like the idea of being able to go all in and get more points that way. So I don't think you necessarily need to change it, but it might be cool to add extra cubes and say you play with this many, but you can do an expansion or do another version where you're allowed to play with double the cubes and have a different variation, because I would have liked to have more points. I feel like it would decrease the chances that there would be a tie at the end of the game and then the first player just wins automatically, because you're only putting down 4 cards. So if everyone's getting everything right and everyone's in the same colors, especially if you draft, you're going to know what colors are around. And if somebody's putting down a green, you grabbed a green too, and you're going to put it down and score the same points. And at the end of the day, the person who went first wins.
Well, to that end, I would actually like the idea of giving points to, or tiebreaker preference to, the player who has the most colors. Because to get, if you're all blue, your goal is just to get 10 blue cubes on the board and you get 40 points. If you're 4 different colors, you have to get 40 different cubes on the board to get that same 40 points. I think you should get more points for that in the end. Like if I have all 4 colors and I have 40 cubes on the board, and Colin has 1 color, I think I won. I did more. Like,
exactly.
Or even give that literally to who has the most cubes on the board of their colors could break the tie.
Yeah.
So I think having that be the tiebreaker, or giving more points to people who diversify the number of cultists that they have, I think would be a better way to score, and you'd end up with less ties possibly.
I'm glad we didn't end up with a tie, but I could see there.
You can also give bonuses though too. So if anyone's able to have their worshippers in one worshiper in every city, they get a bonus point. Or I think you could do other things to add additional points, because I do agree. One, I think when we ran out of followers or worshippers, I did feel like that ran out pretty quick. I like the fact that it runs out eventually. I don't like the unlimited feel of you'll never run out, but I do like. I feel like it ran out a little too fast.
I disagree, though. I actually liked it at 10, and I think that was a great number. But I think that you guys are bringing up something that made a little sense to me thematically. Is when you run out, I don't understand why I'm forced to put some other god's worshiper, occultist on the board, I could see it being like, oh, you can smite or you can get rid of some other person or something like that. I get mechanically why you would increase that, but there is a disconnect thematically a little bit, right?
Yeah, it was like, why do I have to put purple out
there
here?
there were plenty of just the random one did feel a little weird. There were plenty of situations though where you were strategically saying, "Oh, I'm going to put a ritual at an all green place, so Colin has to put a green one on there," or and you forcing other people to put your followers on there is fun. But
I like that.
having to do it like I like the idea of just being able to put. Of just not like at the ritual, especially at the ritual, if it's just all 10.
The gathering, you mean?
At the gathering. At the gathering, if all 10 are there or all 10 are on the board already, then I think it's just
you've gathered
your
worshippers you want.
Yeah, and you don't just throw a random purple one on there. I just think you just don't add anything.
I think that could be a way you get rid of that gathering token in some ways.
I just don't see why do you max out at only 10?
Well, you have to max out at something, and I do like 10. I mean, that's a balancing issue for the game, but you do have to because, like I said, if you're going,
it's like, why would
if you're going for more,
but then you're going to have to add more
be
cubes as well to the game, which increases the component.
Thematically, why are there only 100 followers in the world total? Right. So that and it has to balance out at some point, but. Yeah, and the other thing that you can consider, like Adam was saying earlier when he was talking about having points for, do kind of like the Settlers of Catan type achievements of like longest road or, so like most followers across cities, most follower in one city, and those can be
give you a little
tiny
undertone or
you can do it
little tiny mini games you can play within the games to score other points.
Or you can do it Mario Party style. And have like 5 or 6 of those, but you only play with 3 of them each game, and they're revealed randomly at the end. Like when you play Mario Party, you get rewarded bonus stars at the end for doing certain things, and there's a list of like 10 things, like moving the most spaces, winning the most mini games, losing the most mini games, landing on most spaces of X color, kind of thing like that. But you don't know which ones are going to be rewarded until the end.
But unless that's present at the end of the game, like the game state shows that, tracking that becomes a little bit.
Oh no! So I'm just saying, at the end of the game, you can flip over and say, whoever has the most cultists in the cities right now, or if you're, or you can even do things like, I don't know, maybe.
But the thing I liked about the game that I feel like that would detract from a little bit was that I didn't know who was going to be winning at the end of the game. I liked having we were doing really great with green from the first round through about the third round, and then we just got obliterated with green. And I liked that the game is not decided by that. But if you have a random card that says, in these locations you get bonuses, it's not like somebody actually did anything to make that happen.
I don't like that one as much either. Yeah. But I do like the idea of, first of all, I think it's great as is. I really enjoyed the simplicity of it.
Right.
And if this really complicated things, then I don't know that I'd like it. But I think it would be fun to test it with a few other bonus pointy things that you could get.
I think at the very least having diverse colors is something you can do without screwing it up and just say,
I think that was a good idea.
5.
If you've elected to have 4 different colors, or
or even just like 1, 5 bonus points for having 2 colors.
No, or it's just 5 points for each original color, or unique color. Extra, so he would have gotten 2 points. I would have gotten 10 points out of that. I would have gotten 15 points out of that because I had 3 colors. He only had 2. You only had 2. You had 3.
I had 3 colors.
So if you go for, that's 5 extra points right there. If you go for a strategy that is 1 of each color, which is much harder to pull off, but you get those bonus points. So it's incentivizing you not to use all the same color also. So I like that too. You just straight up, you get your board points plus 5 for each unique color you have down here or whatever. Mm-hmm. But I like the idea of maybe throwing in a little bit more like that because when we counted all the points, something about that didn't feel as exciting to me as I thought it would when everyone flipped their cards. And I saw, it was exciting, but I think I was expecting something else. It didn't feel as much of a point salad as I was expecting it to.
See, and I see what you're saying there.
And I don't think it should totally be one.
Right.
But there's some fun
I actually
element of
think,
that.
as far as a lot of the games we've played as the Gamesmiths, the reveal of this game was a little bit more climactic than a lot of other games that we've played. I think that
seeing
I
everybody's
didn't
color.
know what anybody had.
Yeah.
And
That was really
like
fun.
I was fairly confident that
It just didn't
you
have
had
a
green
twist.
and
Right,
you had
right.
a blue, but then like I was like, oh,
It was a
what
very
else?
fun
Yeah.
reveal. That's not what I was trying to say. So it was a very
The
fun
scoring,
reveal.
you're
I just
saying.
felt it could use a little twist too, where it's like, yeah, you dominated blues, we all get that, but
I like
you
the color
know,
diversity. I think that
some sort
that
of
wouldn't
twist in
detract,
there.
and
I mean,
think
that seems
yeah.
simple still,
Yeah.
but anyways, I
so
think
long as it balances correctly.
I think
obviously.
there's maybe an opportunity there to experiment with something, but again, I still thought the game was very, very good. Just confusing on the rules and some of the iconography a little bit, but
I
Yeah.
also want to talk about. We didn't use the one where you could interact with the deck and
drawing card.
draw a card and discard a card. I like the idea of that mechanic a lot. I really like a looting factor, and I would have liked to play with that. And I really think it should be a Harbinger possibility. I like the
I agree.
idea of having a hand you don't like and being able to pitch one and draw a different one and see if you can use that instead. So I think that would be a good addition to your Harbingers.
I agree. I think it would be great.
I'm not sure I agree.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Why?
Only because we talked a little bit about this already, but if you put it in the Harbingers, it becomes. I felt like every Harbinger you had in there was utilized multiple times in the game by everybody, even when there wasn't one that was like the last pick that was nobody.
Multi-move was last picked twice.
Multi-move, the four move.
4 moves, yeah.
But it was also picked outside of that space as well. It may have been picked last twice, but it was not the last pick every time. So it was useful in certain scenarios. Whereas
Yeah.
that card is not as useful, and if one person can get it, it is a push your luck element to see like, oh, I don't have the cards that I want, so I want to switch, and I like that. But I could see that sitting in games where people don't know how to use it or don't want to use it, and so it's less useful, I believe, than some of the other ones.
But you can put it with
I just
3
like it
moves
as an option,
well.
though,
I
like-
mean, I'm with Colin. I think it's
there's
really
two
helpful.
Harbingers at the end that
Maybe
are
that's
not
really
used instead
interesting.
of just one. So, and that could just be the one. Maybe you have a great hand and nobody wants to use it. But I
I
like
would
do
use one,
have
and
a
I-
bad hand,
but yeah.
especially because I just looking at that big deck over there. I was like, man, look at all those cards. I'm not
Yeah.
using them.
I can agree with
I
that.
want to use those cards.
Yeah, like I do find it unlikely that you play through an entire game where not one person wanted to get
Oh,
rid
I'm
of
not
one
saying
card.
that. I'm saying, especially for a learning game, there are people that wouldn't know how to use that, and I could see it having a little bit more harm than good for some people, and it could disillusion them a little bit. Not to say that that's not worth trying. I think it's worth trying, but I could see it having issues. But I totally agree with the comment that there is a giant deck over there that is.
You never get a
I
touch
think
or
that-
explore.
Well, yeah, I think that's for having the variety of like you could just put it somewhere else if it really bothers you. And then
Yeah,
you pull out like
you can.
if you're just gonna pull out the 40 that you need to play with or whatever, you can just pull those out and play with them, kind of thing like that.
No,
Like,
I
it's
totally
just,
get it. It's
like,
just that's.
no,
Yeah.
and I understand that, but like I mean, Legendary, there's 1,000 cards I leave in the box every time I go to play Legendary. I only pull out a handful of them, and that's so I can have variance of play. So you can just definitely set it up that, pull 50 cards out of the deck, shuffle them up, deal out 40, leave the other there.
I'm
in
not
case
saying
someone
it
wants to
can't
draw.
be done. All
But,
I'm
yeah.
saying is that I would love to interact with that a little bit more, and that's not necessarily a logical thing, but
Right.
that's my gut feeling.
Fair enough. So I think overall we really enjoyed the game. Definitely need to clear up the rules a little bit. There's possibilities for retheming and putting some tweaks in here and there to vary up the scoring a little bit. But overall it's a lot of fun, and good luck on it, man. Thank you.